In a narrow, overheated room in St. Petersburg, a young man lies awake, trapped inside his own thoughts. The city around him feels heavy and restless, and so does his mind. He believes he has discovered a powerful idea, one that could justify violence, erase guilt, and place him above ordinary people. But once this idea turns into action, his thoughts become a prison he cannot escape. Crime and Punishment is a story about a single decision and the slow, painful awakening that follows. The novel was first published in 1866 in 19th-century Russia. This was a time of deep poverty, sharp social inequality, and moral confusion. Cities like St. Petersburg were crowded and tense, filled with people struggling simply to survive. Old beliefs were being questioned, and new ideas about power, justice, and progress were spreading rapidly. Its author, Fyodor Dostoevsky, understood suffering from personal experience. He was arrested for political activity, sentenced to death, and then, at the very last moment, spared and sent instead to a prison camp in Siberia. Years of hard labor, illness, and isolation changed him deeply. After this experience, Dostoevsky became fascinated by guilt, faith, freedom, and the inner battles of the human soul. These concerns flow directly into Crime and Punishment. At its heart, this novel is not a traditional crime story. We know who commits the crime almost immediately. The real question is not who, but why. Is it ever acceptable to do something evil for what we believe is a good reason? And can the human conscience ever truly be silenced?
The story follows Rodion Raskolnikov, a poor former student living alone in St. Petersburg. He is intelligent, proud, and deeply isolated.
Struggling with poverty and shame, he develops a dangerous theory. He believes that humanity is divided into ordinary people who must obey the law and extraordinary people who have the right to break moral rules if it leads to a greater good. To test this idea, Raskolnikov plans a terrible act. He murders an old pawnbroker, convincing himself that her death will benefit society. But when her innocent sister unexpectedly enters the room, he kills her as well. The crime is over quickly, but the consequences are not.
Almost immediately, Raskolnikov begins to suffer. He becomes ill, paranoid, and overwhelmed by fear. His mind turns against him. As the novel quietly suggests, punishment does not wait for the courts. It is born in the conscience. Even without arrest, his guilt becomes a constant presence he cannot escape. As the police investigate, Raskolnikov is drawn into tense conversations with Porfiri Petrovich, a clever detective who understands human psychology. Porfiri does not accuse him directly. Instead, he allows Raskolnikov's own thoughts and conscience to trap him. During this time, Raskolnikov meets Sonia, a young woman forced into prostitution to support her family. Despite her suffering, she remains gentle, compassionate, and deeply faithful. Sonia represents everything Raskolnikov is not: humility instead of pride, empathy instead of isolation. Through Sonia, Raskolnikov slowly begins to understand that his greatest mistake was not only committing murder, but believing he was above other people. In this moment of realization, the novel reflects a deeper truth. Man is not made for happiness alone, but for truth. True peace, the story suggests, cannot exist without responsibility. Overwhelmed by guilt and guided by Sonia's quiet strength, Raskolnikov finally confesses his crime. He is sentenced to prison in Siberia, where his journey toward moral awakening truly begins. Several key ideas run through the novel. One is pride. Raskolnikov's belief that he is superior leads him to isolate himself and commit violence. Another theme is guilt and conscience. Even when no one knows the truth, the human mind remembers. The novel shows that inner suffering can be worse than any legal punishment. Finally, the book explores redemption. Through Sonia's love and moral strength, Raskolnikov begins a slow journey toward responsibility and emotional rebirth. These questions are still with us today. Can the end justify the means? Can intelligence or success excuse harm? In a world that often celebrates power and achievement, Crime and Punishment reminds us that ignoring empathy leads to loneliness. The novel speaks to anyone who has struggled with guilt, self-justification, or the fear of facing their own mistakes. In the end, Crime and Punishment is not just a story about murder. It is a story about conscience, responsibility, and the human need for connection. Dostoevsky shows us that real freedom does not come from breaking moral rules, but from accepting them, and that the deepest punishment is not found in prison walls, but in a conscience that refuses to be silenced. Perhaps the novel leaves us with one quiet question. What happens when we finally stop running from ourselves?
Thanks for listening to Books Simply. If this explanation helped you understand the book more clearly, feel free to explore the next video in this series. New book explanations are added regularly. If you spot any mistakes or have suggestions, feel free to share them in the comments. If this helped you, a like is appreciated. You're welcome to subscribe and let us know which book you'd like to hear next.